Hello everybody, today I want to show you another Squier gem and quite sought after guitar, and that is the Squier Bullet No. 1. Now this one you see here is a career model that I picked up, and it has some issues. There's a bit of a clumsy fix to the bridge that needs to be sorted out and made more stable. The electrics are not 100% and they are in dire need of attention and a service, maybe even a rewire. There is a broken tuner and a few screws missing from the backplate, but other than that and its war wounds to the body that 99% of these guitars have, it looks to all be original and in great condition, so I'm going to attempt to bring it back to its original former glory. But now for the history. The Squier Bullet started its life as a student guitar to replace the outgoing Mustang and Music Maker models. It was designed by John Page and version 1 was released by Fender USA in 1981. Initially there were two models released, and it was intended from the start that these guitars would be manufactured offshore in Korea. But there were lots of production problems such as high actions and other technical issues, so the guitars were called back to the USA and produced in Fender's Fulham factory. Two models were initially released and they were known as the Standard Bullet and the Bullet Deluxe. Retailers at the time used to refer to these guitars as the Bullet 1, but Fender never used this as a market name. The number 1 on the headstock came from an advertising campaign by John Page, as in number 1 with a bullet, like you found on a Billboard chart at the time, with a silver star. Both of these models had a single cutaway hardwood body that posed more than a passing nod to the Fender Telecaster, but smaller in size like the Fender Mustang or Duo Sonic. Their bodies were also thinner than the standard Fender bodies at the time. The necks were crafted using the same tooling as all the Telecaster necks. Originally all fretboards were made of rosewood but were lacking the 21st fret dot, so this pretty much ends the theory that they were actual Telecaster necks that were used. Eventually Fender did release a one-piece maple neck with a walnut skunk stripe, but these examples are extremely rare to find. The Deluxe model was a plastic pickguard with a separate hardtail bridge with a string-through body, whilst the Standard had either a white or black all-in-one metal pickguard with a lipped section that acted as an anchor for the strings to pass through. It did have separate saddles with offset string grooves and height adjustment screws. Both models had two single-coil Alnico wound pickups, and both these and the electrics used were the same as all Fender guitars at the time. The pickups had closed covers as used on the Mustang, and the neck pickup was slanted similar to those used on the Duo Sonic. The jack socket was situated on the pickguard, and both had a three-way switch with a volume knob and one tone knob. Both models were available in red and ivory only. The headstock decals varied slightly. Some bullets had E1 serial number and others had serial numbers that were all numerals with 1 as the first digit. Some had made in USA decal on the headstock and some did not. There were also decals on the standard pickguards that stated patent applied for to protect the painting from the all-in-one bridge and pickguard until the painting was granted in 1983. All headstocks featured the Silver Star decal with either Bullet or Bullet Deluxe. Originally the tuners were made by Clusen until they sadly went out of business. It was in June 1982 that Fender redesigned the Bullet, and this is where it first adopted its more Stratocaster-like body with a double cutaway, though at this time it didn't feature the contour. Again, this body was smaller than the standard Stratocaster body. There were in total 5 new additions. These included the Bullet H1, also known as Bullet 2, the Bullet H2, also known as Bullet Deluxe 2. The Bullet H1 had one humbucker and one coil tap switch and came with the metal pickguard and bridge combination, whilst the H2 had 2 humbuckers and 2 coil tap switches with the plastic pickguard and separate hardtail bridge with a string-through body. The humbuckers on these models were not true humbuckers, but rather 2 single-coil pickups placed side by side and encased with a closed-fronted humbucker cover with the Fender logo in one corner. In addition to these models, the S3, also known as Bullet Deluxe 3, was released, and this also featured a plastic pickguard, a separate hardtail bridge with a string-through body, and 3 single-coil pickups with a 5-way selection switch. 2 bass models were also introduced, the regular scale B34 and the short scale B30. Fender used a one-piece maple neck with a maple skunk stripe which included the 21st fret dot marker on all of these guitars, but it was known that a few had the older maple necks with the rosewood board during Fender's transitional period. The newly acquired maple necks with maple fretboards were a slim D-profile neck with a 7.25 radius, whilst the older necks with rosewood fretboards had a slim but inconsistent profile and radius due to them being hand finished. The colours for these models now included a sunburst and a walnut for the S2, S3 and H2 models. Black was also available as an extra cost option, though none appeared in any of the ads or catalogues. They retained their Telecaster headstocks and had the E1 serial number, though they were made in 1982 and 83. They were all labelled Made in USA, and F-type tuners were used at first, but were later changed for Scala cast-sealed tuners. In late 1983, Fender decided to move production to Japan and market them under the Squier brand. The Japanese Squier bullets featured a solid wood body and high-quality ceramic pickups. These had an SQ serial number prefix on the metal neck plate and Made in Japan on the headstock, though that wasn't always the case. The tuners were now sporting Fender Made in Japan, and these were known as the Bullet 1 in the USA by retailers. These guitars featured a hardtail bridge and later a 6-screw vintage-style tremolo bridge that used Fender stamped saddles. The guitars featured either 3 single coils or 2 humbucking pickups, just like the original USA-made Bullet guitars. The humbuckers were the same single coil pickups placed side by side as American-made early models. The Fujigen Gaki factory also manufactured a Bullet bass too. By 1985, production was again moved to Korea to reduce costs. The earlier models now featured an E serial number prefix that was stamped on the neck plate, and then later the serial number was moved to the headstock. These guitars used plywood bodies and were now marketed as Squier Bullet Stratocaster, and the body now included the contour. The neck was a rosewood fretboard on maple, and new tooling was used to give these guitars the Stratocaster style headstock. The headstock also stated Made in Korea, but some early models had no country of origin on the headstock at all and came with the Made in Korea decal on the back of the headstock. But these necks were Japanese necks and used whilst transitioning to Korea, and this has and still causes great controversy among collectors, as the country of origin stated on the decal means that the guitar was constructed in Korea and not that the neck was made in Korea. These early necks also had Fender Gotar tuners. These models had 3 open single coil pickups now with the bridge pickup positioned like the Stratocaster. Some early models included the 6-screw tremolo bridge with the Fender stamped saddles, and slowly they moved away to a low-cost 2-point tremolo with blank saddles. These models were available in either red or black. There was also a Squier contemporary model with a humbucker at the bridge with 2 single coil pickups sold as an alternative, and these were available in both black and white with either a rosewood or maple fretboard. Strangely, these tend not to be as sought after as the 3 single coil models. The early versions of these models used the same Japan parts such as the Fender stamped saddles and Japanese necks with no country of origin, but still carrying the Made in Korea decal on the back of the neck. And though again very rare, these caused the same controversy as the 3 single coil models mentioned earlier. Now these guitars were marketed as a budget solution to the full-size guitars that sold for a lot more money by both Fender and Squier. But with these Korean Stratocaster bullets, they were sold here in the UK in what we would call catalogues and catalogue shops, such as Argos. Now catalogues were like mad order companies in the UK that you could order from and pay weekly. It was not uncommon for there to be an agent in the street that would let people in the neighbourhood order goods from them, receive these goods often in time for Christmas or birthdays etc., but pay weekly, which made the unaffordable affordable. The agent would get commission and the catalogue companies would earn from the interest added to these items. This is where my brother first got his from in 1985, and that was the guitar I learned to play on way back in 1986 when I was 15 years old. There are rumours again that say that the USA and Japanese versions were sold like this in the UK, but again after a lot of research I don't believe this is true, as I can find no evidence to support this theory. This is the same Korean model that you see here, so let's examine this guitar in depth as I attempt to correct the problems and see if these really are as good as guitarists still say they are and as I remember them. Now the first thing I addressed was the electrical issues, and thankfully all it was a few dry joints that needed resoldering. I was really pleased that on removing the pickguard it all seemed 100% original, so I took apart everything and gave it a good clean. I used this tool here to clean the pole pieces on the pickups and just a sponge dipped into weak soapy water for the covers. The sponge was almost dry but just wet enough to remove all the rubbish and dirt. One thing to mention though is that you couldn't modify this guitar easily as it's been routed for only single coil pickups, so there's no chance of putting humbuckers directly into these guitars without doing some routing of your own. I must say a big thank you to Dean Thomas who sent me loads of bits and pieces for this guitar free of charge. Some I will use immediately and some I'll make use of later, but a massive thanks to Dean. It was a really kind gesture. The screws were rusty, so I soaked them overnight in WD-40, and then I made a mixture of vinegar and a teaspoon of bicarbonate of soda that fizzed away and attacked the rust. Now this won't give you screws like brand new, only buying brand new ones will do that job, but I don't want these to look brand new. I want them to keep their patina so that they look old but not rusty. These have come up perfect. The next job I did was secure the bridge with a small piece of plywood to match the body and glued this into place with some real strong wood glue. This made the bridge really solid. I then painted the wood with some of my daughter's gloss black nail varnish and it matches perfectly. The bridge was fixed at a slant when I bought this guitar and I was considering straightening it up, but I was trying to free the bushing from the body and it looked like it was fixed into place with something like no nails. This would cause a lot more damage to the body. It's a bit hard to film or get a picture with this camera phone, but I thought it's now solid so I'll leave it alone until maybe a later date. Plus this adds to the whole vibe of this guitar and the artist it's dedicated to. The next job was to replace the broken machine head, and thanks again to Dean who sent me a selection of period correct ones, so this was just a matter of unscrewing and replacing like for like. Be warned though, there are many slight variations to these machine heads. I then gave this whole guitar a thorough clean and put it all back together, and while I was doing this I noticed just how great this rosewood fretboard was. I oiled and polished the frets, and thankfully they have very minimal wear to them. The frets are also very level and there's absolutely no buzzing anywhere on the neck, which is a godsend. I gave this guitar a complete setup, and yes, in case you're wondering about that bridge fix, this guitar intonates perfectly and the action is nice and low, just how I like it. Now let's get the readings for these pickups. The bridge pickup reads at 4.65, the bridge and middle 2.35, the middle 4.71, middle and neck 2.33, and finally neck on its own is 4.59. This has a lovely slim neck and the nut measures 42mm. The first fret measures 43mm bang on, and the 12th fret is still a lovely slim 52mm. The bodies of these guitars are also slimmer than the standard Stratocasters of their time, and this measures a thickness of 45mm. The guitar weighs in at 7.3 pounds. Now with all that being done and everything put back together and tuned up, let's listen to some sound samples. So before I leave you with a sample of how great this infamous guitar is in a mix, I hope you enjoyed the video and I look forward to seeing you all again soon. As always, if you have found this content entertaining or useful, then please like and subscribe, as this helps me keep doing these independent reviews and demonstrations. Thank you all for watching.